Hi guys, and welcome to the second guide that I have done for the channel. This one is going to be on Shenlong 1. In a similar way to the last one sort of being on Lin 2, it's more about Shen and his keyword rather than the specific master himself, though with Lin, the other Lin is much more playable than the other Shenlong. So, one thing I learned from the Lin guide was that there is plenty to talk about without spending too much time on the intro, and so I will just sort of start with this, and then we'll move straight into it, which is I play from a very competitive standpoint, and I do not really worry about the looks or the lore or the flavor or the keyword. I simply look for the strongest thing that you can put into a list for 50 stones. So if that's not your style and if that's not what you want to hear about, then absolutely no worries. I just wouldn't recommend this one for you. If, however, you're looking to sort of get into some tournaments and maybe pick up some tips and tricks for Shen, then by all means do that. Also, as another sort of disclaimer, I'm going to talk about the way that I play Shenlong and the models that I like to take with him. That doesn't make it correct, and I am by no means the best Shen player. I'd say that honor probably goes to Danila, one of the Russian players, though he doesn't play online, so it's difficult to sort of test specifically, but from what I've heard, he's pretty damn good. All right, so Shenlong. Why would you want to play him? When would you declare him? And what defines his crew? I think to answer that, you probably don't go in that order. His crew mechanic is Chi. Chi is a token which is not a condition, so it can't be removed from you traditionally unless you play the mirror. You gain one every time you activate, and you can gain one every time you concentrate. So instead of gaining focus, you can choose to gain chi. So and Shenlong removes the once per turn limit on concentrating from friendly monks. So in other words, you are able on turn 1 to activate, gain a chi, and then concentrate and gain 2 more if you so wish. So that is the token and how you get it, and how there's no limit on how many you can have, so have as many as you like. But as for what it does, after you flip a card in a duel, so it doesn't need to be an opposed duel, it can be a simple duel, you can then choose before cheating, important, to spend chi and add +2 to that stat. So it does need to be a duel, so it can't work for soulstone damage reduction, for example, but it can work for hitting your TNs, it can work for hitting simple duels generated by shockwaves, for example, or it can simply be a buff to your defensive stats. So as you can see here, Shen's 5-6, but if I want to, I can be 7-8 if I'm willing to spend chi on the defensive flips, and I have a stat 6 attack, but that means I can have a stat 8 attack if I so wish, and I have enough chi to do so. You might be thinking, wow, that sounds incredibly strong, and that's because it is. So I would say that Shen is probably one of the 3 strongest masters in the game. Damien obviously being top spot, and then you've got Shen and a few other contenders for that sort of, not quite as good as Damien, but better than everybody else sort of spot. And Thunders definitely compete for that spot. So if you're playing Thunders at the moment, we're in a really good spot competitively, and you are probably pretty happy about it. Shenlong is one of the reasons for this. As for why would you play him and when would you declare him, one of the reasons that you would play him and when you would declare him is Damien. So this is the reason that I started training Shenlong in the first place. It's not an aesthetic that I particularly love, but his ability to reach stat 7 defensively is key to surviving against a master that says, if you are not stat 7, I will kill you regardless of who you are and what you think you're doing. Every turn, without fail, and I have better cards than you, always. Yeah, Shen and his crew are a way of sort of saying, aha, but if you if you don't have the red joker, and even if you do, if I then do, I can go one up on your stat. I can make you miss your bonus attack, and therefore my usual defensive tech can then continue to work. And with stuff like butterfly jump, which there's a reasonable amount of in the keyword, you can then sort of move out of line of sight and actually force Damien to take a walk action, which is a moral victory, if nothing else. So, being able to reach defense and willpower 7 and 8 is a really big part of why the crew is so good, and being able to reliably reach stat 7 and 8 on attacks. Now, if you could do this on every single defense and attack flip, the crew would be absolutely busted. But you can only do it on most of the attacks, so it's only mostly busted. The chi economy is harder than it looks to maintain. A strong opponent will pressure you in the right spots, and you will occasionally need to spend chi where you might not have actually needed it, but you don't know that at the time, so then you spend it, and then you realize that they never intended to make that attack go through, or perhaps they didn't have the cards to defend the attack that you thought maybe they did. So there's lots of ways in which you can be sort of baited into spending chi where you didn't need to. Additionally, if you are concentrating for chi, then you're not moving, and then you're not sort of getting towards the objective. We'll talk about the mobility of his crew later, and that it is in fact incredible. But if they remove some of that mobility, usually by destroying your totems, then suddenly, if you've spent your whole early game standing around concentrating for chi, then you're maybe not in the right position to use it. So the chi economy is a big part of the skill of the crew. So coming back to when you would pick him and why. Irreducible damage. This is another thing which is a big part of the crew. So here we can see the aggressive chi trigger. That is discard a chi token. So again, it would be sort of, you'd need to probably spend a chi for the plus stat to make sure the attack goes through, then spend another chi to make the attack irreducible. And you can see how, since a master can do 3 attacks, that would be potentially 6 chi spent. Now, in the case of Shen specifically, he gets 1 back every time he attacks an enemy model, so his chi economy personally is a lot better, but yeah, you can end up spending a lot of chi. Okay, I think I've made that point now. So aggressive chi allows, when resolving, damage from this action is irreducible, and there are several monks that have this trigger, and so several opportunities for irreducible damage. So in this case, with stat 8, relatively easy access to focus because of his bonus, you can be coming in and doing 2 potentially 5 damage irreducible hits, and of course they will want to stone you down, so you can get a couple of stones out of them. But if you, for example, come in with no, let's keep it simple. So you can drain their stones very quickly, and then once their stones are out, you can either just murder them with onslaught, or potentially get through these aggressive chi attacks, usually against non-henchmen. So against stone users, it's actually, you're often much better off with onslaught and just dishing out tons and tons of damage. But if you can find yourself an enforcer with armor, for example, then Shen himself can come in and really, really ruin their day. So irreducible damage. Also, there are a lot of really, really strong models in Keyword. We're going to come on to that. But there are quite a lot of monks that I liked to take out of Keyword in other keywords, and I think that that's a really good sign of a keyword in a good place. Of course, there are a couple of trash models. We'll very briefly discuss those later on. But one standout model that comes is the Four Winds Golem. And I mention it not because it's the best model ever, but because it's the only way you can get access to it in 10 Thunders. So, of course, it doesn't have the Soulstone cache. It is infinitely worse than the Arcanist's version, but it's still a good model, even despite this, and having access to it is something that you sometimes really want. Mathematically, it can really line up nicely with its collision trigger, with its ranged attack not being a pistol, with having an inbuilt push on it, with having up we go as a melee action if there's some hazardous in an area that you know you're going to fight over, etc. So having access to the Four Winds Golem is another reason why you might want to play monks. Charm Warders are in keyword, so Charm Warders are a piece of tech that you very, very often have to take. I find more and more and more I'm finding I'm wanting Charm Warders because they are, first of all, just very good models in general, but second of all, necessary tech against demise-based keywords and summon-based keywords. So yeah, really, really good to have access to Charm Warders in keyword. Just saves you a couple of stones when you end up taking them quite a lot anyway. And the last and possibly main reason to play Shen is the versatility. So it's the fact that he can do, in combination with his crew, pretty much anything. You can play any style, and I don't just mean his monk styles, I mean any style of play. You can play to completely murder your opponent, you can play to completely outflank and outmaneuver your opponent, you can play to out-scheme your opponent. That one's the slightly harder, but still it's very doable. And the reason for that is his 4 styles. So what's the best way for me to get these up without clicking on anything that I don't want to? I know, we go to upgrades and then here we go. So we have, which order do we want to go in? We want to do Wandering first. Here we go. So Wandering River style. This is when Shen1, whenever I say Shenlong, I mean Shen1. We're going to ignore Shen2 for the entirety of this video. So when Shen activates, you can choose which of the 4 styles you want. You'll remain in that style for the rest of the turn unless you use this changing styles trigger while using an AP for the ability on the card. You don't do that a ton. It happens, but it's not massively common. There are some reasons to do it. We'll talk about them later. But the Wandering River style is the style that you will be in by default for the majority of the game. The reason is that it gives Shen butterfly jump. So in combination with the ability to go to defense 7, willpower 8, he also then moves 3 inches away after an attack. So it makes him incredibly difficult to pin down and kill. And he does have access to the Low River Monk, which is a healer, quite an effective healer and quite a cheap healer. He also has access to the Low River style that we'll talk in a second, which turns his totems into healers. So plenty of access to basically forcing a shot to miss, moving away, and then being healed up even if you do get some damage through onto him. The second part of this card, equally if not even stronger, is the Four Winds Punch. So you have to discard a chi token. You'll have to do this for almost any of the river style abilities. So you discard a chi token, and then you can choose any up to 3 scheme, scrap, or corpse markers within 3. You then push the target 6 in any direction, and then you place those chosen markers anywhere within 3 of the target. Now, what the hell does all that mean? It means that you've got a 6-inch push. This can be on a friendly model without a TN, so you can flip any card, including the black, and it will work. And your model goes 6 inches, so it's like a free disengage or a free 6-inch movement. I mean, it's not movement, it's a push, but you get what I mean. And in addition to that, you get to move up to 3 markers, usually schemes, because you're not that bothered about scrap or corpses in monks. But you take 3 schemes, up to 3 schemes with you, and then place them within 3 anywhere of the target. That is incredibly good for scoring a number of schemes. We're going to come on to that later. But this is the bread and butter, and one of the reasons why it's so good. In addition, it's not just Shen that has access to this. It's important that both of his totems have access to this ability as well, including the butterfly jump. So it means that during Shen's activation, he can bonus one of his totems to take the Four Winds Punch action onto him, moving 6 inches basically for his bonus action, take a scheme marker with him, or up to 3 scheme markers with him, and then he's still got 3 AP ready to go, and one of those, if he wishes, can be to Four Winds Punch something else. He can do this as many times as he wants, however, it does cost chi. And it's 6 against defense, and again, this is a duel, so you can spend another chi if you wish to be on stat 8. So it can actually be a very efficient kidnap, because you've got a 6-inch push on stat 8. Niche uses can include moving other crews, scrap and corpses around. So while we don't care about the scrap and corpses very much, opposing models might. And sometimes we're using Despelarot. He's a good out of keyword option. And so we can move some corpse markers into a position where he wants to end his turn, thus gaining us a soul stone. So nice little possibilities there. Okay, the second style upgrade that's worth having a look at is the High River style. So this one is the quite aggressive one. It's basically access to Ruthless. You'll note just how much versatility this crew and specifically this master have. So terrifying and manipulative can be ignored at will, and it gives access to the Flaming Dragon Kick. Now, Shen himself doesn't necessarily want to use this that much. It's mainly just if you really want blast. So if you want to catch someone off guard and just hit them with that 5 blast 4. Again, with models damage gaining burning 2, so it's effectively 6 blast 5. But slightly delayed. And additionally, it just randomly ends the burning condition on this model. So rather feisty if you're up against something like Karis or, I don't know, whoever the hell, Reva, whatever. You can just suddenly end your burning condition, no problem. But where this one gets a little bit spicier is that your students, yet again, also gain the same thing. And that means that suddenly you've got 2 little broomstick boys with min 3 attacks. Now, they can't charge with it because they have to use it as a bonus action. But they can simply double walk. So they can double walk up and then, you know, still hit someone with this. So they essentially get a 9-inch threat on a 3-4-5 blast. And whenever they copy Shen's ability, they're on -1 stat, so they'd be doing it on stat 5. They can still use chi, and so suddenly you've got these 2 little broom boy totems that are worth, you know, actually they're worth a hell of a lot, but on paper they're worth, I don't know, 2 stones or something. And suddenly they're doing stat 7, 3-4-5 blast attacks with burning. That's pretty nuts, and if someone dives into your Shen crew, I find that doesn't happen as often. Usually Shen comes to you, but if you make the mistake of jumping into Shen's crew and you've sort of left yourself a little bit open, the totems can come in and really, really make a mess. So that's the High River style. Next one is the Low River style. So this one is essentially monks within 3 of either Shen or a student, and that includes Shen himself and the students themselves, can spend an additional chi to get a suit of their choice. So you can see how really you can end up spending a lot of chi, but if you really want it, you can get the suit that you want. Uses for this that are most common is Shen himself wanting to use chi for onslaught. So if you've transferred some chi to yourself, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but if you've transferred a lot of chi, you're sitting there with a stack of 6, then suddenly you can essentially go attack, chi to stat 8, chi for the mask for onslaught, and suddenly you've got stat 8 with onslaught, and then you hit them, and then you hit them again with stat 8, you get a chi back, you go again, onslaught, and you can do 6 attacks of 2, 3, 5 with stat 8, and it costs you 3 chi for the masks, and it costs you 6 chi for the stat 8s, but you get 6 chi back, presuming you hit. So if you start off with a stack of chi, you can do some really, really gross activations with Shen and in combination with Pebbles in the Water. Other really, really nice combinations with this is if you have Charm Warders near monks or near Shen, they really, really benefit from having their suits baked in because they're minions, obviously, so they can't normally get the suit that they want. And so you can get, for example, the hand drain, card drain trigger Shady Dealings on their Jinx. Or if you have your Low River Monk and he's near your students, which he usually is, then suddenly he's got the Ram trigger built in if he really needs a big heal immediately. So Pebbles in the Water are really, really good. In addition to that, this is where we talked about earlier that you have access to a lot of healing. So it's a 2, 3, 4 heal with an additional Pulse 1 on the target. Now, it is a pulse, so it doesn't the extra 1 doesn't affect the target, but ping healing around, really, really nice. And 2, 3, 4 is a really, really solid stat. The only slight problem is that when the students do this, the TN becomes 7. And so sometimes you do need to spend a chi token for the ability, another chi token just to pass the TN, or cheat a card. can be a bit expensive, but generally having access to 2, 3, 4 healers, or sometimes you can just activate Shen and say, right, we need to do it now, and Shen himself can go revitalize, 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 and then bonus a monk, a student to do another revitalize, and you can do 4, 2, 3, 4 plus 1 ping heals, and just everything's full. It's really crazy. Of course, you very, very rarely do that, but it's the fact that you could do that which is really problematic for your opponent and forces them to think about very carefully if they want to take things like Let Them Bleed into a Shen crew that can suddenly just heal everyone back to full. The last style is the fermented style. This one is one of the least taken, I would say. However, it has a couple of benefits. One is that negatives become positives. So this is when you want to go and slap the shit out of a Serene Countenance model, or you know, any model really that can put you on negs, or has to put you on negs, because if it's an optional one, they'll obviously choose not to do it and you don't get your positives, but you still get a straight, right? Because if they don't do the thing that they were going to do, then you effectively get a straight out of this. But if they have to put you on a negative, if it's like Serene Countenance, then you just go from a neg to a pos in one action. Additionally, this is a 2-inch melee attack, the Falling Rave Kick, and so suddenly Shen's engagement and your student's engagement becomes 2-inch reach, and that can be really nice for just generally being annoying and holding people. So just walking a totem up within 2 inches but not 1 of an enemy model. In the late game, you don't want to do that generally because the model will just thank you and just kill the totem. But in the late game where they don't have time to kill the totem, or killing the totem won't score them points, then it can be a really nice thing to do in the late game. But this is the least used style, I would say. If you do want to use the Rave Kick, again, you discard a chi token, then you place this model into base contact with the target. That happens as a cost, so it happens first. Slightly interesting. Some scenarios make that useful, and then they suffer 3. So it's a nice one because there's no damage flip, there's no chance to black or anything like that. They just suffer 3 and gain staggered. In fact, do you even flip a card for the damage flip? Because you could black it, right? So rules wise, I can't remember off the top of my head. This is why you shouldn't theorize mid video. Anyway, those are the 4 styles, and one of the reasons why the Shen crew is so insanely good. Okay. So, which strats and schemes do you want to play Shen into? The answer is almost all of them. He's really, 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 really strong and very, very versatile, and I can't say that enough, and I know that it's a bit of a cop-out, but it is simply true. But let's go through each one in turn and talk about them. Raid the Vaults. Raid the Vaults is essentially a kill strat left over from GG3, and the only real sort of tech that you can bring to Raid the Vaults is activation control, that is usually pass tokens or killing unactivated models, or displacement. So if you can push people out of range of the vaults, you can sometimes score and deny. And additionally, if you bring counter tech, so for example laugh off, so as not to be pushed out, then that can be good as well. Shen can bring Sensei Yu, and almost always does, who has laugh off, so that's good for Raid the Vaults. A lot of the keyword models have Wind Blast, which includes a 3-inch push, which is very, very often good enough to get someone away from the vaults, and can very often be on stat 7, so almost guaranteed. Additionally, you have that 4 Winds Punch from the Wandering from the Wandering River style. So again, 6-inch push, can be on stat 8 or 7 depending on who's using it. Really, really incredibly good ways to displace people away from the vaults. It's a very good kill crew, so Shen himself can really, really murder stuff, and you can most certainly build your crew to go very aggressive and just kill them and then have more models than they do and then score strategy that way. So for Raid the Vaults, Shen's particularly good. Then I would basically group all of the other 3 together. When we started, everyone was very excited about all the variety that GG4 might bring, that we might see these really, really schemy crews on Stuff the Ballots and some really interesting tactics in terms of Cloak and Dagger, of picking up the intel versus stealing it, and so on and so forth. In actual fact, I would say that all 3 of those strategies, Plant, Cloak, and Ballots, are all essentially just about AP efficiency. So if you are efficient with your AP, you can move towards the objective, whatever that might be, efficiently. And if you have some free interacts or some ways to generate additional AP via fast or whatever, then it's simply kill the opponent and meanwhile have 1 or 2 AP left over to be able to do the thing. And additionally, pass tokens, again, if you can out-activate by, again, killing or having pass token generation, then doing the thing last will usually score or deny some points as well. So, is Shen AP efficient is the question for the other 3 strategies, and the answer is very much yes, and that's largely because his 2 totems provide you with that 4 winds punch, so you've got sort of 6 inches of free movement twice, 3 times if you include Shen's bonus, so you've got sort of 3 6-inch pushes per turn, which is a bit like the sort of Damien-esque unbelievable amount of free movement during the turn, and the less walk actions that you have to take means the more value you're putting down on the table, either via killing or via scoring. And so free movement on totems that don't need to be doing anything else and don't need to be particularly close to do it just makes him very, very efficient in that sense. So those are the strategies. Let's talk about the schemes then. Let Them Bleed, I mentioned a little bit earlier. So Let Them Bleed is a reasonable scheme. I think in general, as a strength of GG4 scheme, it's not one of the easiest to score. One of the most common mistakes that I see people make, or at least I think is a mistake, is that they attempt to score it on the highest 2 value models that were hired. That is usually, in my eyes, where this goes wrong, because if you leave their highest cost models alive, they're likely to get an incredibly high amount of value from those models as a result of that, and you're likely to lose the game even if you score the scheme. Whereas if you simply murder the most expensive 2 models, wait till a later turn, and then score it on the highest cost alive models. Let me bring this up. Sorry, I should have done that earlier. So it doesn't mean that they have to be the 2 highest cost hired. It's the 2 highest cost on the table at that time. So I would highly recommend murdering the 2 highest cost guys, or ignoring one of them if it's one of those like Ionis type models that's really expensive but sits at the back just doing its thing. So murder them or ignore them, and then target down the 2 models later in the game, and then at the end just make sure that you've done a bit of damage all around. And usually you have to kill their healers to score this second part, because obviously they'll know about it after the first part is revealed, and then you're going to need to kill the healers quickly or have ways to deal extra damage later. So Let Them Bleed, generally a tricky scheme to score both points. Generally not too difficult to score the end point if you don't score the first. If you do score the first, I recommend doing, as I said, kill first, score later. Deathbeds. Deathbeds is relatively easy for Shenlong. The reason being he's very, very good at killing people. The scheme, you almost always choose strategy as your token of choice. So your secretly chosen marker is the strategy marker. You're allowed to do this if you check out the FAQ on Deathbeds. It's one of the only times when you are allowed to affect strategy markers in any way. The reason that Shen in particular is reasonably good at scoring this one is because he can bonus one of his totems to use 4 winds punch on himself. He takes a scheme marker with him, drops it near both the target and a strategy marker, and then charges that target and murders it and scores deathbeds all in one nice, clean, tidy activation. There's not much that they can do in terms of counterplay. They can't interrupt it. It's all done during a single activation, and it's all done at stat 8 approximately. So really, really hard to stop him from scoring that first point. Second point is just about AP efficiency, finding a couple of scheme markers later in the game and having them in the right place, sometimes with 4 winds punch, sometimes without. Power Ritual, it's pretty scoreable for Shen, reason being Wandering River Monks, so we've not talked about those yet. They are the 5 stone schemers of the crew. They are very, very mobile. They are movement 6, they have leap. They do need to find a mask for it, but yeah, they have leap, and they also have Deadly Pursuit on top of that, so they can move 6, leap 6, and then move another 4 at the end if you have the card for the leap. So incredibly mobile. That means reaching the corners of the map, not too difficult, and they're not the easiest model in the world to kill, because again, as with all of the monks, they can go to defense and stat 7. If you have the cards to back that up, they can be very hard to kill. In Your Face is incredibly good for Shen. Largely because he himself is a very, very killy master, and he's very, very capable of murdering. Now, the problem with this one becomes the second point, and this is a problem only if you really want the 4 Winds Golem in your crew, because if you do, you have no other 10 stone models that you're likely to take unless you go for a 4 Winds Amonozako, very, very elite Shen crew. You can do it, I've done it, it works. But if you don't do that, then your 4 Winds Golem is the only model that can score the end point. They know it, and they will likely target him down. And because you don't have the Soulstone cache, you really, really need to use positioning and healing really, really well to keep that Golem alive. And you need to really, really never risk him. And I find that very often you want to, because his offensive output is really impressive. But if you have to be so passive and scared with him so that you can score your endpoint of In Your Face, that can be bad. So 4 Winds Golem by no means an auto include. He's a good model, but if you don't need him, then your next highest model that will almost always be hired is Sensei Yu. And because he has Laugh Off, and because he's a very durable model, because he's a monk, he has chi, because he's a henchman, because he has hard to kill, he is a very, very good In Your Face scoring model. So In Your Face, very, very good. Deliver a Message, not the best necessarily for Shen. 2 reasons. One is they don't have a natural keyword model that wants to score this. You could argue the Wandering River Monk wants to score this, sure, but if he does, he's definitely dead at the start of the next turn, right? So if you come in with a Wandering River Monk, you're going to have to hold one back, so he's not doing anything early. Then he comes in and delivers the message, and then he almost certainly gets absolutely ripped the following turn. So is it worth it to sacrifice a 5-stone model to do that? You might decide that it is. It's fine. I think that where this scheme gets a bit better is, again, the versatility of crew hiring that you can do in Shen, which is to say that you can definitely hire Desper or Wukong as 2 sort of out-of-keyword schemers that are really, really good. Kitty Dumont is another one, but I think the first 2 I mentioned are probably more valuable, and they are both excellent Deliver a Message scorers. Desper wants to be near their master often anyway to steal their stones. Wukong is perfectly happy being there because he's basically immortal most of the time. And he's very mobile, but they're both very mobile, so they can get there. Outflank. This one's okay. I personally don't like the scheme very much anyway. But again, Wandering River Monks are pretty ideal for this because they can Deadly Pursuit, into the right area. Getting the schemes there in the first place, you're going to probably need to get there with Wandering River Monks, so Deadly Pursuit is less useful. You kind of find yourself wasting your Deadly Pursuit or needing to have the leap cards, and it's a little bit untidy. I don't love it. Hold Up Their Forces, again, it's a bit like Deliver. You can do it with Wandering River Monks and just Deadly Pursuit into engagement with whatever you need to score on, but after that they will almost certainly die. So it's a case of, are you willing to sacrifice them? And if you are, then how are you scoring the second point? Because your little guys will already be dead, most likely, and then you're really sort of like having to play around scoring the second point. I really like Hold Up Their Forces in situations where it doesn't cost you a lot of AP to do it. So it's a very AP efficient scheme if you can build a crew around it that's able to score it. In Monks, that's only really if you're playing a Fermented River Monk style, so where you turn 1, get 3 Fermented River Monks, they all punch each other with Have a Drink and build up a bunch of poison and chi, and then they go out into the world with effectively Armor 2 and chi for defense. Makes them tricky to kill. They've got some self-heal, they've got a 2-inch reach, which means they can engage from a further away. So Fermented River Monks are probably the best way to score Hold Up Their Forces. You have to decide whether you think that's good enough to warrant taking the scheme and taking those models. Espionage, really, really good. 4 Winds Punch, place a model wherever you want, take some schemes with them, put them exactly where they need to be. Espionage, really, really, really good. Sweating Bullets, again, very, very good. You've got Sensei Yu, he's not going to die, he's going to be somewhere near the middle of the fight. He can't be moved once he's in position, so wait for them to put a henchman somewhere near the middle, move Sensei Yu up, score the point. In terms of them needing to score the end point, or sorry, you scoring the end point, just kill their masters, kill their henchmen, or push them out with Four Winds Punch, push them out with Wind Blast. Sweating Bullets, incredibly good for Shen. Information Overload, not so good. So we don't have a bunch of free scheme production. We can move schemes very, very easily, and we've got a lot of little models that can occasionally drop one, but not enough to really outclass any other crew that might be going for it. There's enough little models to kind of make it not amazing to declare against Shen, but it's not one that I tend to pick. Take Prisoner, I hate the scheme. It's my probably least favorite scheme of the entire GG. That said, and one of the reasons for that is that there's so many ways in which the endpoint just accidentally gets denied. So if they kill their model on hazardous terrain, for example, then it wasn't killed by your model, so therefore it doesn't count. If they're buried, then they're counted as dead, but they're not counted as being killed by you. So like stuff that just randomly denies it just really pisses me off. But the first point is relatively easy to score, and the second point, in theory, Shen is a pretty good crew for it. Four Winds Punch, again, just, you know, kidnap the model back onto your side, or Wind Blast it back onto your side, whatever it is. Not a bad crew for scoring it. Protected Territory, probably the most popular, and I would imagine at the end of GG4, if anyone does the stats, it will be the most taken scheme by far. Again, because you can reposition your schemes very easily and get them from your side of the table to theirs, so you can sort of put them down in advance and then move them up with Four Winds. That's very difficult to counteract and very easy to score. Also, you've got quite a lot of models in your crew. Normally, it's a high model count, which means that by turn 5, you've often got 2 models still left alive that can then go and be in position to score the second point. And Snare, you're going to get sick of hearing the words Four Winds Punch, but guess what? Four Winds Punch allows you to move up to 3 scheme markers. So you can move a model 6 inches towards an enemy model and then put down 2 scheme markers within 3 of your model, which is very likely to be within 3 of theirs. That's 6 inches push, 3 inches for the place, then another 3 inches, and then their model. So that's an incredibly long distance that you can cover, and you don't need the schemes anywhere near them at the start of that action. So very, very hard to counter. One thing to mention, that several of these schemes I mentioned, they are good for Shen because Four Winds Punch exists. If you kill Shen, then Four Winds Punch is not there anymore, and I have had games where I've taken in Snare, and then Shen's been killed in turn 2 or 3, which is very rare, but it can happen, and if it does, then suddenly you realise, wow, it's actually incredibly hard to score these schemes anymore because I was so reliant on Four Winds Punch to get the job done. So do be aware of that and keep it in mind. Okay, how long have we been going so far? 37.5 minutes already. Wow. Let's see if we can get this in under the hour. Probably not. Core models. We're going to come on to crew building now. So here we have what I would consider some of the very core models for a Shen crew. You've got Shen himself plus his 2 students. You've got Sensei Yu, who is pretty much an auto-include. Let's talk about why. Let me bring up the cards. So if we go back to models and go to Monk, and then we bring this over here for a moment. So Sensei Yu. Sensei Yu is largely an auto-include because he allows you to get free chi if your friendly models within 6 are damaged. It's once per activation, but you tend to not take multiple instances of damage on monks because they can often defend using chi. But when they don't do that, or when they think, oh, I'm only going to get clipped, and it suffers damage from an enemy effect, so it doesn't have to be a full-blown, you know, focused severe for you to get this. It can be any enemy effect that causes you damage. You can gain a chi, so gaining extra chi, really, really important. Additionally, friendly monks within 6 can discard a card to treat the concentrate as a bonus. That's really good on the low river monk, for example, because he doesn't have a bonus, so suddenly he gains one, and it is to gain additional chi. So Sensei Yu, a big part of your chi battery, as it were. In addition, he has Laugh Off and Hard to Kill, solid tech. He has the usual chi stuff, so you'll see this on all these models, Enlightened and Harnessed Chi. Basically just, as I talked about you can concentrate for chi, and when you can spend it for +2. 5/6 solid stat line. He has a stat 6 with inbuilt tomes, so he can either gain focus, gain chi, or, good for a laugh, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. This is your main card draw within the faction. So, sorry, not within the faction, within the keyword. So you will charge one of your own models, often a model with some self-heal or with some armor or with the easy ability to be healed, and you'll punch them, sadly for min 2, but there you go. And you will punch them, they'll relent, and you'll automatically draw 2 cards and discard 1. You can do that twice. Additionally, he has a stat 7 Wind Blast, which can be stat 9. That's absolutely mad. Damage strength, not amazing, but it's a push 3, so on stuff like Raid the Vaults, you can score there. With Drain Magic as a nice little trigger, so if they've only got 1 card left and you suspect it might be the red, something like that, you can pop in a stat 9 Drain Magic and get the job done. Additionally, he can use a simple lesson, so no flip required. A monk within 8 that has chi can reduce that chi to gain fast. That's really, really handy for 2 reasons. One, just for simply giving a model fast. It has to be less than Sensei Yu, so it doesn't work on the Four Winds Golem, but on pretty much anybody else. So, for example, Charm Warders, let your Charm Warder get into position, or simply go for extra jinxes, really, really drain the opponent's hand or apply injured or whatever. But the other bonus is that you can do this onto any of your models, and then Shen1 has an ability called Spiritual Realignment, which allows you to transfer a condition from one model to another, and that's how you can put fast on the Four Winds Golem, because you put it onto a cheaper model, like a Totem or a Low River Monk or a Wandering River Monk with Sensei Yu, and then you transfer it from that model to the Four Winds Golem with Shen. That costs you an AP, but sometimes, especially on turn 1, when you're really buffing up your Four Winds Golem to go out and murder, can be good. If you're not doing that and you need it, you have Juggernaut. A couple of little tricks here. One, I think just one really that's really worth mentioning is, don't forget that when we come back to Shen and we have a look at his card, his bonus allows another monk to take a bonus. So that means that sometimes when it's like, right, I have Shen and I have Sensei Yu, and both of them are under threat, you can access Sensei Shenlong, go with him and do whatever you need to do to make him safe, but at the same time you can tell Sensei Yu to take a bonus and take Juggernaut and sort of heal Sensei Yu up, and then you can use, for example, Low River style during that Shen activation and heal Shen up and really sort of save both models at the same time. So just a nice little trick with Sensei Yu. Okay, so that is Shen, your students, and your Sensei Yu. Okay, Four Winds Golem. Let's come back to him. I'm going to need to bring Arcanists in for a sec. Here we go. So he's a 10 cost model, and you really need to be aware that, weirdly, he's one of the most killable models in your crew. He has Butterfly Jump by default, so that's great, but he's 5/5, he's an Enforcer, and while he can use Chi, he uses it differently than the rest of the monks. So for him, a Chi only gives you a positive flip to the duel. It does not give you +2. He can never be higher than, well, he can't easily be higher than stat 5. Maybe there's some out-of-keyword option I'm not thinking about, but maybe Second Masters, take McGabe 2 or something. But generally speaking, he will be 5/5 with Butterfly Jump, and that means that with 9 health, he is actually killable by 2 focused attacks. You know, if they have 2 serious focused attacks, then they can get the job done. Now, he does have a Middle of the Storm, so if those actions are pistol actions, he's going to reduce the damage by 2. That's also very handy because it's not just for him, it's for any model within 3 inches. So during your deployment, if you're up against some guns, you can have your Golem somewhere central, have your other models around, and then you're not quite as at risk at the start as you otherwise would be. It's also on Story of Raijin, so if you're used to having it there, you've got it here as well. He has Flight, and he has a Demise. Demise is sometimes nice, don't worry about it too much, it's not the main reason you take him. Up we go on 3 against Size is very often a very, very good attack. You might know it from Zip 1 and a few other models. It doesn't work particularly well if the opposing crew has a lot of Flight, so be aware of that, for example against Nekima. But the 2 triggers are fantastic, so the target and enemy models within one of it suffer damage, so basically +1 to the attack and a pulse of 1 around it, nice. And Pouncing Strike on such a big model really allows you to get a hell of a lot of movement, so you can leap, then charge 6, hit something, place another 5, attack that one, and then be, you know, miles up the board. With a lot of options there. Also has Wind Blast with inbuilt collision. This is really, really nice for sort of sniping models early in the game. People don't expect it. It's not a pistol, so that's nice. It has the ram trigger inbuilt. It's on stat 6. You can have positives easily from the chi. You can have focus reasonably easily. We'll come on to that in the unpack section of the video. And it has a 3-inch push inbuilt. Be aware of that, by the way, because I've fallen foul of that a couple of times. The target is pushed 3 inches. It's not up to, it is 3. So if you're lining up to do 2 shots, and trying to get, for example, severe 4 plus 1 from the collision, and then again severe 4 plus 1 from the collision, or maybe moderate 3 and 1 from the collision, and doing 9 points of damage, that's a lot. That's a really serious ranged output. But if you go exactly within 8 of your target and then the first shot puts them 3 inches away, you're suddenly really sad. So do be aware and make sure that you're within 5 of the target, or that you're pushing them into some severe terrain or something like that, or you're pushing them up against a building, whatever it is, to make sure that your second shot is in range. Do be careful. Little trick with the Gale Force, just be aware that this trigger exists. It doesn't come up very often. You do need to discard a chi token to declare it, so that's interesting. But when resolving, you move them instead of pushing them. Nice if you need to get that. But more importantly, you increase the range, the distance moved by 2, so it's 5-inch move, and you remove any markers moved through this way. That can be really, really useful against marker-specific crews, but it can also be really good just for removing a bunch of scheme markers in an unexpected way. Do be aware that you still have to move away from this model. So even if you get that trigger, you can't sort of just move them in any way you want. You do need to be moving away, but it really does give you some ways to, for example, go into an Akima crew and remove all their corpses, or against McMorning, for example. It's like they've got the little corpse farm going on. You can fuck with that. Last thing to say about Four Winds Golem is that he has a bit of a weird mechanic regarding how he gains chi, and this makes him a little bit of a chi battery. So after another friendly monk within 8 takes the concentrate action, if this model has 2 or fewer chi tokens, so that means this can help him get to 3. It sounds weird because you read 2 and you're like, okay, so 2. No, if it has 2 or fewer, then it gains a chi token. So in other words, if any other monk within 8 inches of it concentrates, he gains a chi as well. So they get to do their concentrate as normal, but then the Four Winds Golem, provided he doesn't already have 3, he can go +1 up to 3. And that means that, for example, you can start your unpack, we'll talk about it more later, but you can start your unpack with a totem, concentrate twice, and now the Four Winds Golem has 2 chi, and your student has 3 chi, 1 for activating, 2 for concentrating, and you're really getting that chi battery going early on. So Four Winds Golem, really handy for building up your chi. Okay. Charm Warders. Charm Warders are your tech unit of choice. They are unbelievably good. Let's come on to them. So key parts is they are a monk, they have 5-6, which means they have 7-8 potentially. They have leverage, so don't forget that if your opponent reveals a scheme, you've suddenly got pass tokens. We spoke about how that helps you win a lot of the strategies. This is why another reason why Charm Warders are so good. After an enemy model is summoned within 5, they take 2 damage, so again, against summons, they're pretty good. They have the exorcism trigger. Target has to have a summon upgrade attached, but if it does, the target is simply killed. And this is stat 6 against willpower, but with chi, that can be stat 8, so you can pretty much guarantee, as long as you got the Crow, or you're in low river style and you're near Shen, for example, then you, as long as you have the chi, you can pretty much guarantee the kill on any summon. So really handy against Asami and Dashel and those sort of heroes. But also because of how their bonus works, and also because of this barrier to the other world, can be good against really cheap summons. So good against those kind of Drudge, Tony Cruz, or Hamlin, that sort of thing. Charm Ward is very, very often very, very good. Then we come on to Jinx, which is 1, 2, 3 and injured. Again, 6 against willpower, can be 8. Shady dealings. For each of the opponent's unrevealed schemes, they need to discard a random card, so they don't get to choose. And that means that if you've got some high crows in hand, you can basically force them in the early game to discard 4 cards. They don't get to choose. There's a really high chance you're going to pick out some card that they really, really wanted or needed, including the red. So yeah, Jinx, unbelievably good. And well worth keeping in mind. Obviously injured as well, just generally a very good thing to hand out. Chaos Theory is surprisingly handy. So it's a 5-inch pulse, and every model that's within it, every enemy model, needs to discard 2 cards, and before they start discarding anything, you declare 1 suit. So you have to choose 1 suit, and it applies for every model. So for example, you say masks, and then each model in turn discards 2 cards. So first of all, if you know that their deck is stacked for some reason, so for example, if they've just done Big Brain Bryn and they've just filtered all their bad cards out of their deck and you know that it's going to be some really good stuff, you go in with a Charm Warder and make them discard 8 cards, then you're going to see a lot of good stuff going away, so that's really nice. But also, if any of those cards match the suit that you chose, they take 2 damage per. It's 1 instance of damage. So if they happen to be unfortunate to draw 2 masks, then they take 1 instance of 4 damage. And it's from a tactical action, so it gets around things like Incorporeal. Also worth noting that the Chi Blade, their melee attack, ignores Incorporeal. It can be irreducible, and you can spend additional Chi tokens to basically get yourself to a straight flip on damage if that's what you want to do. It's very, very intensive on the Chi. I wouldn't necessarily be doing that too often. It's better to keep it defensively to keep the Charm Warder alive, or offensively to get the stat 8 and get that Shady Dealings trigger off. Last thing about the Chaos Theory is there is this Crow trigger. It basically allows you, so the normal bonus is within a 5-inch pulse, but if you have the Crow trigger, you can additionally, so that pulse still happens, but you can then choose 1 other model anywhere in Loss and make them take the same flip with the same suit being chosen and potentially take damage. That's really, really important if you want to, on turn 1, for example, chip away at Terracotta Warrior. You can just say, right, there you go. Did you get a mask? Yes, you did. Great, take a damage. So now, completely sort of risk-free, I've dealt one of the 3 necessary damage to ping these bloody terracottas off the map. And if you've got 2 Charm Warders, obviously you can do it twice. Or you can pick someone's totem, and if you happen to get the 2 of the same suit, they're often just dead. They've usually got 3 or 4 health, and you can just one-shot someone's totem. It's a tactical action. There's very little they can do about it. They just die. And of course, they might never hit the suit, and you just don't do any damage with it, hence the name Chaos Theory. Okay, that's the Charm Warder. So then we've got the Wandering River Monk. Again, these are the ones that I think are very, very good and are likely to see a lot of play. Wandering River Monk is here. So these are your schemy boys. Again, they can use Chi. They're 5/5, so potentially 7/7. They've got move 6 and Butterfly Jump built in, Deadly Pursuit built in. Very, very nice. You've got Wind Blast, so very handy for displacing people. There is that No Witnesses trigger for armor ignore. Doesn't come in very often, but can be clutch. Their melee attack is fine. It's stat 5, so again, can be 7, but often you keep your Chi for defensive purposes because they're just designed to essentially move, leap, and interact, and then Deadly Pursuit to where they need to be. They're cheap, they're mobile, they're great. Then you've got the Low River Monk. Now, actually, recently I've started to run the Low River Monk less, but, a lot of people do not. Hold on, let me just get rid of that. The Low River Monk is your healer. They're very, very cheap. They're 4 cost. They can only get to defense 6 only, but that does mean that they can actually die, unlike a lot of the monk models that sometimes just really feel like they can't. Models which start near him can heal for 1. He himself heals for 1 from the healing drafts, 1 from the regen. So, for example, if you want to draw cards with Sensei Yu, you can punch the Low River Monk, deal hopefully 2 damage to him, and then when he activates, he'll automatically heal that back. He has a 1/2/3 heal on 8 inches, and he has a couple of really nice triggers, 1 for focus, 1 for additional healing. No bonus is the sad news, but again, if you're near Sensei Yu, you can chuck a card to take the concentrate action. He has Distracted inbuilt on his melee. Not particularly important, but you never know. Sometimes it can come into play. And we didn't actually cover the totems, so I suppose we better briefly do that. The totems are terribly statted. They do have cover if they're near other models, which they nearly always are. Obviously, you can use Chi to try and get them up to 6/6, and you will always use their Chi defensively. Because they are incredibly important. You need to keep them safe, you need to keep them alive because of their following in his footsteps. So because they can copy Shen's style abilities, that's what makes them incredibly good. Additionally, they do have that Distracted on the melee, same as the Low River, so that can be handy. But generally speaking, you will use the Shen attack and you will do Walk, Concentrate, and then use the Concentrate for the Shen attack. Chanted Sutra is the other option, so if you're not doing Shen's style, so for for example, on turn 1 and Shen hasn't activated yet, you will very often transfer chi from one target to another. Most often what will happen is the student will activate Concentrate, which automatically gives your Four Winds Golem chi, and then you will transfer one of those free chi that you got from the Four Winds Golem over to Shenlong himself, because you want to build up that pool on Shen so that he can always threaten to be an absolute monster. So those are the models that I would consider pretty damn key. So now let's move on to the ones which I do not think are key at all, and that's these over here. So we have Banying Minakorea and his Sunless Self. Now, this is a new model from Ashes. You can use it. It's a mobile, schemy type guy. He's not a bad model. I just don't think he's auto-include. And I personally, after very limited testing so far, he was the Ashes model I was least excited about. And having tried him, I'm still not excited about him. I don't think that the Shen crew needs the Minako Rhea and Shadow Marker and Katashiro summoning engine. I just don't think that's something that it needs. And I don't think that Banying on his own without that is worthwhile. So I'm going to say that I don't run those. Then you've got the High River Monk, the Thunder Archer, and the Fermented River Monk. If you enjoy the Hold Up Their Forces style, then you can attempt some fermented stuff. I've done it. I've played it several times. I don't think it's bad. I think it's not quite at the very top end. So therefore, I choose not to run it at the moment, but certainly strong enough to not delete. Monk of High River. Weirdly, they see a little bit of out of keyword play in McCabe because giving them Mirror and Mask and Blade and stuff really turns them up to 11. Again, I think they're in a very similar spot to the Fermented River Monk, which is that they're not a terrible model, but they're just not quite at the top end, and there are just better options that we've already spoken about or are going to. So I don't hire them in Shen ever. And so I would delete these for me. Thunder Archer, I've tried them a few times. I always like to think that they're going to work. I think, but if they've got Incorporeal, or if I really need the blaster, no. You just take Fuhatsu. Just always, if you're ever thinking, I could take a Thunder Archer, just take Fuhatsu instead and thank me. Right. Lotus Eater, absolute garbage. Not even talking about it. Shen 2, Shen 1 is a monster on his own, and then he has his crew around him. Shen 2 is designed to really pour his resources into his crew and to make himself the support master instead of the anchor master. Monks don't need that. And Shen 1 is just so game-breakingly good that you don't need to play Shen 2. It's not that Shen 2 is particularly bad, though I don't like him. It's just that Shen 1 is so blissfully good that you don't need to worry about it. So, he's gone. Right, out of keyword options, how are we doing? Are we under the hour? We're still just under the hour. We're not going to manage it, but I'll do my best. Yeah. Story and Red Library in general are nuts. Raijin is your marker removal in factions. So if you need marker removal, he's there for you. He's slightly less appealing in monks than in other keywords because you already have the Four Winds Golem, so you already have access to the anti-shooting. So usually you've got Raijin for anti-shooting, anti-markers, and also if you need to attack somebody's movement for some reason, if you need to get around a defensive trigger or something like that, then Raijin's there for you. I've played him in Shenlong. He's still playable. Than. Than is unbelievably good in all of Thunders. He is a 6-inch take the hit model henchman. He's got some unpack, so within 4 you can move 3 with Righteous Protector. He's got some ping healing, some ping damage. He's basically one of the strongest models in the entire faction. And here is no exception in that if you have some models with a good output but that could potentially die, Than's your man. And the argument for that here is your aspiring students and your Low River Monk. So if you fear that the opponent's crew has the capability of removing your totems and monks that are sitting at the back of your crew doing their support thing, then you can consider Than to keep those models alive. And also, he can, if you really need the offensive output of the Four Winds Golem, but you're really worried about him dying if they've got a model that has an inbuilt reposition or something like that can really follow him after the butterfly jump and just kill him, Than can help you there as well. So Than, another good option. Wukong is one of our better scheme runners at the moment. If you have stuff like Protected Territory or Power Ritual, stuff like that, which other schemes? Espionage as well. Then Wukong is very, very good. If they don't have any anti-demise or anti-healing, then you can pretty much guarantee that Wukong is going to do very well for you. I especially love him on plant explosives. I usually give him 2 bombs, and I'm pretty confident that he's going to get both of them down for you each game. Bookkeeper is not a particularly traditional one. People usually feel satisfied enough with Sensei Yu for card draw, but if you want another sort of schemey piece and you want a little bit of card draw to come with it, then the Bookkeeper for 7, it's something to consider. It's an incredibly good model. I'm starting to like them out of keyword a little bit more in a number of crews. I think they're something to consider. I certainly wouldn't consider them autos. So then we move into the versatile pool. The 2 ones that you'll see the most by far are the Terracotta Warrior, giving you take the hit, so where you don't need, Than on a budget. If you don't need Than necessarily, but you do want to just have your little Terracotta here that says don't kill my little guys, fantastic. He also gives you a card draw, and he can then turn into, using Mold of the Other, he can turn into some of your other pieces like a Charm Warder, a Wandering River Monk, even a Totem. If one dies early somehow, you can actually turn into one because they're an Enforcer. If you got the Red Joker, you can turn into the Four Winds Golem. So the Four Winds Golem, if it dies, your little 4-point minion can turn into a 10-point Enforcer. Kind of a nice surprise to pull on people. Fuhatsu, a bit like Than, he's one of those models that you'll see a lot in Thunders. He's got an incredible range defensive output. He's got an incredible range of defensive tech, including Armor 1, Hard to Wound, Laugh Off. So his defensive stats are crap, but he's got self-heal, he's got an enormous gun, and you can load him up with fast and focus using Shen if you want to, using Spiritual Realignment. You can move him with Four Winds Punch, so you can disengage him with that, or you can move him into range, whatever, and then lay down the murder with Fuhatsu. So Fuhatsu, very regularly seen with Shenlong crews. We move over to the Qian Gong options. Now, Bill is often taken in a lot of Thunder's crews. He's one of the better beaters in the faction. I would argue not so much in Shen, because it requires you to put down some high cards to hit, and you are just better most of the time putting that investment into Shen. So Shen himself is well enough of a beater that you don't require necessarily Bill. And often you take Bill as well because he's ruthless, but with Shen's High River style, he can be ruthless, so you don't really need it. Kunoichi, usually, again, an often taken Qian Gong support model. I don't think you need it as much in Shen because Shen himself can transfer focus from another model. So let's say this student goes, concentrates twice for focus. As long as it's within 8 of Shen, Shen can say, okay, I'm going to target this monk. I'm going to target this this student, and I'm going to flip a 5, so a 3 plus chi or a 5, and then I'm going to give that focus over to this Four Winds Golem. And as long as you flip the 5, focus goes from there, and now you've got a double focus on your Golem or your Fuhatsu or whatever you need. Also, the Low River Monk has a focus trigger on its heal, so on a 6 tomes or a 4 tomes with chi, you can hand out focus using the Low River Monk. It's not as good as a Kunoichi, but it is there, and therefore spending 7 stones on a Kunoichi feels a bit worse. So I'm going to remove that one from my list of suggestions. It's not the worst idea in the world, it's just not what I would go for. So we got the honeypot options then. So we have Kitty and Maddox are the usual out of keyword options from that keyword. I would argue that your Desper and your Wukong are probably just better nowadays. Kitty used to be the model of choice. I don't see it so much anymore. I think Wukong does similar stuff. Kitty, however, does have the 6-inch push. But again, we've got 6-inch pushes on 3 different models. We've got Shen and both students bringing that. So I think there's just a bit of redundancy there, and spending 10 on Kitty would feel pretty bad. Maddox brings you the major, the huge card draw package, the biggest card draw package in all of Thunders. And so if you're feeling like you really want to have a hell of a lot of card draw, Maddox is the way to go. I'm not going to delete her. She's not a model that I take very often in this crew because you've already got Sensei Yu doing a bit of that, and you can easily have some terracottas as well, topping up your card draw. So I don't think she's the top choice, but she's there if you need her. Despelarot is probably one of our better GG4 scheme runners, being able to steal stones, having Don't Mind Me, and having Leap, as well as being able to farm corpse markers for stones. There's quite often a fair few corpses because you've got a lot of monks, and some of them are going to die at some stage, and your enemy is certainly going to die at some stage. So Desper, a really solid piece, and up there with Wukong as my scheme runners of choice. I would definitely consider him, and he ends up in a lot of crews. Kenshiro's going to get an honourable mention. I have never run Kenshiro in a Shenlong crew. Let me start with that disclaimer. However, I'm starting to think about it because your ability when you're slapping your own stuff to seek the blade and look for jokers and see what your top cards are, and also your tactics tokens cheating from the top deck. So in combination with chi, and if you don't have enough cards to combine with your chi to save all your little models, but if you've got enough cards to save some of them, and then you're willing to roll the dice on a couple of the other ones and just roll with some tactics tokens and some chi and really cost your opponent a lot more resources than you, and you're willing to let one or two of those models die when you don't quite get the flip that you wanted with the tactics tokens, or when you really want to just flip some TNs and not spend your cards on that. I think Kenshiro brings some of that. He's also incorporeal, which makes him a really good target for Sensei to punch the shit out of. And he has, a 3-inch push displacement on his attack. He's also got some armor ignoring possibilities. So again, the kind of crews where you're going to be thinking about declaring Shen, for example, if you're up against some armored targets, then suddenly Kenshiro has a little bit of value. I'm not saying hire Kenshiro all the time. Again, I've never hired him myself. It's just a little bit of extra tech to think about. We are now over the hour, but we're not quite done. So, card priority. Something that I recommend doing for any crew that you're trying to learn is to get used to. So sometimes if you're just sitting at home, you've got 5 minutes, take a fate deck, shuffle it up, deal yourself 6 cards. Have a look at it and say, right, today I'm practicing, let's say Shenlong. Okay, great. I've got these 6 cards. Allocate in your mind, what are these 6 cards doing? So let's imagine we've got, let's do it now. Let's do it live. So here's a hand, and we shuffle and shuffle and shuffle, and we draw. Right, we've got this hand. It's not a very special hand. So first of all, we're thinking, are we going to stone that? Well, first of all, let's see whether we can do what we want to do. So what do we want to do? We want to kill things with high masks. High masks, why? Because we've got Shenlong and Onslaught. Do we have any high masks? No. Okay, not great. We can also kill stuff with high rams, because we've got Critical Strike on Sensei Yu, and I always forget if it's for Hatsu or Sidir. Anyway, high rams, always handy for dealing high damage. Do we have any? No, we've got the A. In combination with Chi, that might be enough. That's all right. High crows. High crows, why do we need those? Because of the Charm Warder's drain hand, shady dealings on the Jinx. So a 10 and an 8, they don't look that special, but in the hands of a Charm Warder who can be stat 8, suddenly these are very often 4 cards removed from your opponent's hand. So we're sort of marking those cards in our head as being, okay, so these are our potential Jinx cards. We want to keep hold of those. Also, we could maybe use the 10 to do a Jinx with the trigger, and use the 8 to do the bonus with the trigger. So medium crows tend to be our Charm Warder bonus, so we'll keep hold of those. Have we got any middle tomes? Why do we need middle tomes? Because of Shen and the Low River Monk. So Shen's bonus and the Low River Monk's heal both have a 6+ tomes trigger to give focus, and we obviously want free focus generation as much as possible because AP efficiency wins Malifaux games. So do we have any of that? No, we don't. That's unfortunate, not good. Do we have any middle masks? Because we need those for the Wandering River Monk's leap. Kind of. So we need a 5+ masks. So here we actually do have a leap card, but we know for a fact we're going to have to spend a chi and we're going to have to hold it. So let's imagine that we stoned. So we're drawing 2 more cards and we're chucking away this one because we know we don't need it. We're chucking away this one because we know we've no use for it. Now we know that we've got a free focus, so that's good. So we've got a focus on either Shen or a target of the low river monk. Fantastic. And we've got the high mask, so now we know that we can get off one really guaranteed massive onslaught attack with Shenlong. Fantastic. I really recommend doing this multiple times, taking a look at a new hand and saying, what have we got? Okay, onslaught, fantastic. Here's a charm warder bonus or potentially a jinx. Here is a free focus, fantastic. Here is our leap, and then here is either another leap if we've got 2 wandering river monks, and here is some crap that we'll have to discard at some stage. You know, very, very often once per turn, something will catch you off guard. You have to discard a card. So for example, when you hit something with Sensei you first of all draw 2 and then you discard 1. So now you've drawn an 11 of rams and you've upgraded your 1 to a 4, and then you do it again, punch, draw 2, 1, 2, and you've drawn a 12, and now you get rid of, I don't know, get rid of this 4, and then you can use chi plus this to do the charm warder bonus. So get used to allocating cards and seeing what it is, oh fucking hell, seeing what it is that you need in advance, and also what you're missing. So if you see, for example, I don't have a leap card, I don't have any mid-tomes, so now I'm not going to be able to get any free focus, so maybe I need to be a little bit less aggressive with Shen this turn. I'm better off pouring Shen's AP into transferring focus to Fuhatsu or to the Four Winds Golem, or putting fast on another model, or moving myself into position, or gaining some chi, or maybe focusing for focus. I don't love doing that because I'd rather just try and get the cards and do it later. But if you don't have the leap card, start thinking, okay, this Wandering River Monk, instead of being here, is here. So now what am I doing instead? What am I doing? Because I need to think about in advance, am I able to leap? And if not, what am I doing? This is one of the reasons, by the way, that I'm saying that Wandering River Monks are incredibly good and I like to have them, but a Wandering River Monk that has no access to leap is so much weaker than one that does. So if you have multiple Wandering River Monks, be aware that you're very unlikely to have enough masks and enough access to masks for all of them to leap each turn. So it means that the more Wandering River Monks you have, the weaker each one gets. One exception to that, and one thing that I didn't mention, is that when Shen activates and he changes style on Vassal, this is very often noted by having an upgrade box with, for example, Wandering, right? And then we activate Shenlong and we put a copy of him here to show that this is the style that he's in. When he does that, every Wandering River Monk on the table, so let's imagine now that we're running some crazy mass scheming thing and we've got 3 Wandering River Monks, excellent, Shen activates, goes to Wandering River style, now all of them can concentrate. So we can give 2 of them focus, 1 of them chi, we could give all of them focus, we can do whatever we want, any combination. Now on the turn 2, so let's imagine that we've played out the turn, okay, so we finished turn, we've gone turn 1, we've gone to Wandering style, and we've gained our 3 focus, fantastic. We now go into turn 2. If Shenlong activates and he chooses Wandering River style again, that will often happen, it is the best style, it's the one you'll be in the most often. He doesn't get to do it again, they do not get to all go again. So the only time that you can do it is if during that turn you actually switched stance, so you, for example, did a Four Winds punch and you used the tome trigger to change styles. Okay, then first of all, when you change style, your low river monk can take the concentrate action. Nice. So you can gain a lot of chi or focus by changing styles. However, it does cost you, you know, middle tomes to do so, and you have to use the Four Winds punch as an on Shen himself, which costs you a chi, costs you an AP. It's not cheap to be swapping styles. But if you finish the turn in low river style, then, as we go into turn 2, now when Shenlong activates and goes back into Wandering, fantastic. We now have another focus on each of our Wandering River Monks if we so choose. Or, you know, again, any combination of focus and chi. So that's something with changing styles. Okay. Last thing I'm going to talk about, and then we are finally done. What are we on? 1 hour 15 almost, bloody hell. Okay, let's imagine, because they're already in position for it, that we are playing a nice flank game, and let's imagine for a moment that somehow I've got all this focus. No, I'll remove the focus so it's a bit clearer. Let's talk about an unpack. So, this is a bit of a weird list, but let's imagine this is my list for a second. Right, so Four Winds Golem is very often going to be somewhere so that he can have his anti-shooting aura. Shen1 is going to be somewhere near the front so that he can get towards things and murder them. Sensei Yu is very often going to be near Shen1 because you can punch him and draw cards and then heal Shen with the Low River Monk. Low River Monk's going to be near Shen1 to provide that healing. Your students are going to be somewhere near the back, somewhere safe, so perhaps here for concealment, here for concealment, and within 3 inches of some of your other models so that they have cover from facing the crowd. And then your wandering river monks are very likely to be not in severe terrain because they're not unimpeded, but they are likely to be somewhere that they can then move, down to some scheming point. Okay, we're going to start the turn. The first thing to do is to so this is a bad position, and this is a good one, and the reason is that we want to be within 8 of the Four Winds Golem, which we are, but we also need to see both the Four Winds Golem and Shen1. And that's because very often what we want to do is we want to activate a student. When the student activates, he gains a chi. And then he's going to, a very, very simple basic activation that you'll do quite often is on turn 1, is you will concentrate twice for chi. That will give the Four Winds Golem 2 chi, and then you transfer that chi from the Golem to Shen. You need a 5. We get it, lovely. So the Four Winds Golem drops a chi, and Shen gains 1. Then, if this student was better positioned, like here, so he can see this, see both models, we go with him, and we do the same thing. He gains 2 chi. 1 for activating and 2 for concentrating. Now the Four Winds Golem goes up to 3 chi. Then we transfer 1 from the Four Winds. We get it. We waste a 13, sadness. And Shen1 now has 2 chi. The Four Winds Golem has 2 chi. Then Sensei Yu, for example, might go now. He would charge Shen1, so he punches him. Doesn't matter what he gets because the trigger is inbuilt. He flips 3 cards because we relent, so that's a minimum of 2 damage. Shen1 takes 2. We draw 2 cards. We throw 1 away for the good for the laugh trigger. If our hand is looking good now, we can then move Sensei Yu further up. If it's not looking good, we can stay where we are and punch Shen1 again. Attack. Relent, it doesn't matter. Oh no, Red Joker. It's a shame because we've wasted it, and we actually have to take moderate damage. So we've now taken 5 damage on Shen1, which sucks. However, we do then again draw 2 cards. Wow, we're drawing some shit now. But we can throw 1 away, and now we've got to hold the Black Joker. Lovely. Sensei Yu now gives one of these students fast. So he drops the chi and gives it fast. He can do that without a flip and within 8 inches. Fantastic. Sensei Yu's done. Now, the Low River Monk can go. He gains a chi for showing up, and he can heal Shen1 back up again. If we get the tomes, which we just did, fantastic, we now get a focus on Shen. 1, 2, 3, 2. We do it again. 1, 2. We don't get it that time, so let's imagine that this is a 6 of tomes that we've got in our hand. We chuck it in. Shen's now got 2 focus. We get the heal. It's another 2, and Shen is basically back up to full because when he activates, Four Winds, Low River's done. Now when Shen activates, he heals 1 because he's near the Low River Monk. So we've fixed our hand, we've got 2 focus here, we've got 2 chi, and when Shen1 activates, he goes into Wandering. Now both Wanderings have either focus or chi, let's say focus, and he gains another chi just for activating, so he's sitting here with 3 chi. Now he can transfer abilities, so for example he does Spiritual Alignment on this student, he needs a 5, he gets it. He takes the fast away from this guy, and he gives it to the Four Winds Golem. So now we've got a 10 stone model that's getting an additional AP instead of a 2 stone totem. Then Shen can target the other monk with Spiritual Alignment. He doesn't get the 2. Let's imagine I've actually got a handful of cards and I cheat something. It goes off. I can use the ram trigger that's inbuilt to remove chi. So I remove 3 chi from that student and I can give it to whoever I want. It's almost always Shen himself. And now I'm sitting with a Shen1 with full health, 6 chi and 2 focus. He is an absolute monster. Now for my bonus, I can tell this guy to take a bonus. I need to flip a 6. I do so. he spends a chi to do the Four Winds punch. He has to flip a card because it is an attack action, but I relent, so it doesn't matter what he flips. Even if that was the black, it would still go off. It goes off, and now Shen gets to push 6 inches. It is a push, so I probably have to just avoid this line here, and I probably bump somewhere here. Then I can charge 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and anything that's here is fucking dead because I've got 6 chi, I've got 2 focus, and I can be in whichever style I want, so I could even be in low style. Oh no, I couldn't be in low style, sorry, because I've just done Wandering for the Four Winds punch. Sorry, I got excited. But you start to see some of the potential, and this is before we've even gone with the Four Winds Golem, who is now fast, can do a leap needing a 5, boom, off he goes. He's now wherever you want. Let's say he's going to go and hunt something down over here. He then walks here, charges here. He's got a 2-inch reach, and whatever was hiding over here thinking it was perfectly safe is very fucking dead. You can start to see the power of this crew and the potential unpacked possibilities. I hope that helps. I hope you're excited about some Shenlong games if you weren't already, and I look forward to not seeing you on the tournament ladder very soon. Enjoy and take care. As always, if you've got any comments or questions, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I've missed, but we're already well over an hour and I don't want to spend all day on it, so I hope that that's good. And as with the Lin video, if it helps anyone, that's amazing. Have a great day, and who knows, I'll maybe see you soon for some McCabe video action. Take care.